I see this situation like the future of RPC space as the, three-tier system. So the first and the base layer is basically those node runners. They know how to run nodes. They have hardware. So there should be a protocol where they can connect.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the SLATECAST. Today we are talking about RPC with Vichaeslav, the CTO of dRPC. Vichaeslav, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you. And alongside me, as always, is Nate, our CEO and co-host of the SLATECAST. Vichaeslav, do you want to tell us a bit about why dRPC is different and what you see as the big sort of a dilemma in the RPC space? For anyone who isn't aware, the TLDR from my perspective is it's the way to connect to a blockchain, like how you connect your wallet to a blockchain, you use an RPC. But I know you've got some interesting thoughts on RPCs and kind of the problems that there are. So give us a bit of an idea.
Yeah, you're totally correct. Like the simplest way you could describe like what's an RPC is actually, I think like the more correct term would be API. Like it's basically blockchain
Yeah.
API. If each thing should have an API if you want to talk to. And actually blockchain, like it's your fancy way to synchronize state across different computers. And yeah, then if you're just syncing, state, it's not useful. So you need to access it. And there's like API, which we historically started calling RPC in Web3 space due to the, Bitcoin and Ethereum originally, they started using this. And now we kind of call everything RPC. So basically, when we need to get your user's balance, or I don't know, when we need to send a transaction, which is actually extremely important, like we use RPC. And talking back to how is dRPC is different. Well, the problem is that over the years, like blockchain ecosystem and Web3 ecosystem are here for a number of years already. Throughout the years, like there are emerged a type of company that we call right now RPC provider.
Mhm.
Basically, at some point we understood that nobody wants to run their own nodes, to access this state from the blockchain. If you're building a wallet, you don't want boggle your mind with infrastructure and running some number of servers, which are start to become extremely expensive because Ethereum state grows, and over the year it becomes more and more expensive to run Ethereum nodes. And also there are some kind of blockchains that are extremely efficient. I mean, like they have their state grows extremely fast. So yeah, there's RPC provider, which is basically a software as a service company that runs your
Yeah.
own nodes for you. And in multi-chain world, right, need to support 10, 20 blockchains. It's the only choice. So the problem is that currently if you take top 3 companies in the space, they will be centralized, meaning this is basically typical Web2 software as a service company that like it's not decentralized in any way. It's just, typical company. And of course, it has all the benefits and all the disadvantages of centralized companies. Meaning, of course, it's like a little easier to build those things. It's on the benefit side, maybe sometimes efficient. They are more useful,
Hmm.
typically more focused on UX. Uh, but of course, it's a risk of centralization, which means censorship and some other problems that we can maybe discuss later. So dRPC is trying to some kind of fix this problem. And I won't lie, we're not the first to do that. There are a few other companies that try to do that, are still in the market. But what's different about us is we're trying to acknowledge the uneasy fact that actually when your RPC provider client, it's a business of itself. For example, it can be DEX or SushiSwap, for example, and they have their own business to run, and they also have their like, centralization, decentralization stuff going on inside of their product, have some different challenges. So they don't have time to think about, whether we're using centralized, decentralized RPC too much. They have to think about other things, performance, resilience, durability, stuff like that. So dRPC uh, is an exploratory project that tries to figure out, is it possible to combine decentralization with those properties. So that's like how we're different from like the companies that try to decentralize this market before us.
So you're calling this like a hybrid approach, aren't you? So what is this hybrid approach, and how do you find the balance between centralization efficiency and sort of decentralized empowerment? Where is the kind of that tipping point?
So that's a good question. The it has a really easy answer. Like when you're trying to find this balance, you just talk to the clients and you understand like other things, what are the things they care about, and how can you accomplish. So if you can't force decentralization on them, they just will go with the other your competitors. So you need to like fulfill their wishes, what they want. Like
Mhm.
if they want better latency, for example, as a client, you need to understand how you can do that. And if you're when you're we you understand that you have fulfilled those wishes, like you are now satisfiable enough for them, you can then think like, are there any ways that we can push decentralization forward? What things can we improve on that side of the things? And also like what benefits it can give us that centralized providers can't. For example, like the thing that we figured out at one point that actually our model, which you can get described as, so it allows us to become to support more chains than any centralized provider. And the thing is, like, um, our architecture is basically you can talk about maybe two components, main components. First one is, of course, there are nodes should be run, like blockchain nodes, Ethereum clients, and Arbitrum clients, stuff like that. So
Mhm.
we actually don't do that ourselves. We have a pool of third-party companies, all small to medium companies focus on blockchain infrastructure. And they basically are proficient in running nodes. And we have a permissioned pool of those companies, meaning that anyone can join, but we have to approve them first. And also we can talk about price. And the second, so it's first component, and we can call it it's decentralized, it's permissionless, it's permission. But the second component is our proxy tool, which is basically like our clients send requests to our proxy and we distribute requests to our providers. And we try to optimize latencies,
Mhm.
amount of errors, stuff like that. So basically, because of that architecture, we actually, if we want to support new chain, for example, we recently support near blockchain. And it kind of only we need to add some code to our proxy. And we kind of need to find people who already can run, and that's it. So, but if you're a centralized provider, you have to also understand in details how Neo work because you need to run their nodes.
Mhm.
And you need to run the nodes. You need to buy servers also for that, which can be, of course, challenging if you're, for example, running hardware. So for us, adding new chain, it's basically a question of software. Whilst for centralized provider, it's most of the time is a question of hardware, and software questions tend to be solved. It's easier to solve them most of the time.
So so are you basically kind of acting as kind of like an RPC load balancer fallback proxy so that you can
Yeah.
siphon requests as required on the needs kind of in real time?
Yeah. So basically, you can call us RPC aggregator if you want. The
Mhm.
thing is that it's actually a toy model of a decentralized provider, because like we can, that from this point, we can push decentralization forward. So for example, if we understand right now, so yeah, okay, we're competitive on this market with the price, with the latency, with durability, availability, stuff like that. So now we can ask ourselves, okay, so maybe we can make this pool permissionless, you know. And it's of course like then, for example, there's a number of decentralized RPC solutions that already have some kind of permissionless pool of providers. But the thing is like how can we do that without, sacrificing latency? And for example, right now, this is a toy model where we kind of figured out how we can build a system that's not sacrificing latency and quality. So, and now we can, for example, do permissionless stuff, but what can it give us? Yeah, for example, it can give us more capacity. If anyone can join, we basically can, solve more requests or support even more chains, something like that. So, and we always trying to, make those decisions based on two things. Like, of course, like one of the things, we have a mission. We want to solve this centralization problem in RPC space, but we also understand, as you probably understood, that we want to have a product market fit. When I have clients, we want to be sustainable. So we kind of trying to balance that.
Fantastic. So when it comes to finding that balance, as I imagine most companies in crypto have at the moment, what sort of challenges or potential solutions are you kind of been able to offer around regulatory oversight and regulations across different jurisdictions?
So the thing is, it's actually a very important question that not a lot of people address right now. So we see some instances of censorship right now. I don't like, not sure whether it happens right now, but we saw some, for example, of censoring Tornado Cash smart contracts in the past. So, and if we're talking about, current situation on the market, if you like interpolate this situation in I don't know, 5 years, you will it's clear that the only way that it can evolve is that everyone basically implementing censorship on the RPC level. And actually, like I had this thing in my ETH Denver talk. This was a paper published by some legal research team of legal researchers that actually proposed this, as a way to, AML KYC for crypto. You can basically, censor everything on the RPC level because it's like the ultimate intermediary between blockchain and web application.
Hmm.
So, like, how can we solve that? The only thing we can do is basically, distribute the responsibility. So right now, when every RPC provider chooses for themselves, do we want to censor something? Like we want to become is like, and to what extent? I mean, like, because it's hard to understand like what compliance means in this setup because like there's US compliance, there's Europe compliance, a lot of compliance. It also, of course, affected where are you? And so we can
Hmm.
distribute responsibilities. So every, provide, like we call those people who run the nodes in our protocol, node providers. So they can decide for themselves whether they want a censorship or not. And currently, like we run most of the gateways. And there's a second, if everyone of node provider can decide for themselves. We also have to decide for ourselves. For now, we do not censor anything, but in future it could change. So the solution would be to allow other companies to run our gateways. And our gateways are basically a piece of software that anyone can set. And the idea is that uh, there will be multiple companies that can run a gateway, and they also can, decide for themselves whether they want censorship. But in my opinion, the most important thing is to create this independent community of node runners who can provide these services. And like, because gateway actually, like, it's a software problem. As I said, like it can be solved by us or by anyone else. But if you create this community of node providers, which is it's extremely hard because it involves hardware, a lot of blockchain knowledge, then you can solve this compliance problem because everyone will decide for themselves. And it won't be of course, if you want to send a transaction that is censored in the US, you can send it to the node provider that is not compliant because, for example, they are in Europe or China, some other country. So that's our view on the situation. You can
It's
also
really interesting. Go on.
yes. So you can also argue that, like, but compliance is not bad every time, all the time? And that's another interesting question.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking. Like, are you able to offer your clients sort of solutions where basically they can request that they want to be compliant, but they don't want to be involved in censorship, like as things progress, so that like I don't know, so that their default is something that's quite centralized and fast and low latency. But if that provider were to start censoring, they could quite quickly just flip over to something more decentralized that might have a bit more latency, but isn't censoring certain transactions. Is that
Yeah.
something they're able to sort of offer?
Yeah. So basically, that's architecture. So, like as I said, the only problem right now, the centralized gateway we are running it right now. That's like that's one of the huge steps that we have to and will take in the future of trying to decentralize also this gateway. That's more important. I would say it's more important and more difficult than this. For example, I described permissionless build join to our provider pool permissionlessly. So it's kind of not the thing we will do in a few months or is probably this year, but it's our long term goal.
I mean,
Uh,
how do you even do that without offering kind of like thousands of different API endpoints and domains to point at? Like, it seems like a very difficult problem to solve, right?
yeah, I see this situation as I was mentioning already mentioned this community provider community,
Mm.
gateway runners, all this stuff. So I see this situation like the future of RPC space as the 3-tier system. So the first and the base layer is basically those node runners. They know how to run nodes. They have hardware. So there should be a protocol where they can connect. They can basically outsource all the stuff that is not connected to blockchain software
Mhm.
to just to this protocol. Basically, like client, acquiring clients, marketing, UX, UI, heavy web UI stuff like that. So they could focus on this thing they do best. And there should be basically gateways, and in the end, everyone would be able to run a gateway. Like it's kind of, there's a way to do that. It's kind of technical problem. If you want, we can go into details. But the thing is like, imagine what you do. And then of course, no, like, so basically, if you wanted to send requests to your dRPC, you would have to run some software and connect to this protocol of providers. But nobody, like not a lot of companies, web3 companies want to do that. So basically there will be the things that I call front ends. For example, you have now, I don't know, like, I don't know if we are okay to calling some company names. Like, imagine there's some centralized provider right now, very famous. But
Infura.
what? Yeah,
Like,
Infura, for example.
yeah.
Like, they already build their decentralized infrastructure network. But the thing is, like, so in future, Infura can be just a front end, and their responsibility, for example, would be just, developer tools, better developer experience, acquiring clients, business development, marketing, and, maybe some SLA, like stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
and they kind of centralize, of course. And if you want, as a Web3 company, you just want to to copy paste a link and start working, that's your choice. But for example, if you're a little bit more sophisticated and you have a you know bigger volume of requests, you could run this software that will connect you to the protocol, and you will basically connect directly to this dRPC protocol. So, like, I hope I answered your questions. So, the
Mhm.
question,
Oh, yeah. I think it's just I do find it fascinating because I'm on the verge between sort of the technical and kind of and not really. The very few people sort of understand. Or the average person doesn't understand that when they install a crypto wallet, every chain that's in that wallet, so they install, like, say, Trust Wallet or something, they all connect to different RPC endpoints and they may be all different providers and they're set by default. You can change them yourself, but by default, they're set to certain providers, aren't they? And there's a centralization there around which wallets use which providers, isn't there? So is there a
yeah.
conversation around kind of how wallets set up the default RPC endpoints as well?
Well, that's like a hard question. I wouldn't have I'm not sure how I could answer that because, like, for example, wallets like MetaMask, they allow you to change defaults, but some others don't, and they don't do that not because it's like I don't know, it's they are against it. It's just so most of the clients don't want to mess with it. They want
Mhm.
everything to work. So it's kind of a business decision. So for me personally, the solving the centralization problem of RPC, it's actually like the ultimate commoditization of the market. So like basically even now it's pretty easy to switch providers because like
Mhm.
the protocols underlying like the communication, I mean transport protocol, blockchain and the web application, they all standardized because like blockchain foundations do that for them. And so if you want to, for example, you want to switch provider X to Y, it's kind of will take some time because you need to test everything, stuff like that. But it's kind of easy. So we need to make it basically, you know, to push it to the max. So it would be as easy as possible. And uh, the difference between those, for example, front ends would be just a set of compromises. Like this front end, for example, it's a little bit cheaper, or maybe it's a little bit faster, or it provides SLAs, or it's focused on working with enterprise customers, or something else. And there's another front end with different sets of um, compromises, but you could quickly switch between them. And also, the problem is what I was referring previously. Like, the thing is that this front ends, you can build, like, it's not a big deal to build a new one. The problem is that today, those front ends are also like those companies that run those front ends. They also run a huge infrastructure, hardware infrastructure that's kind of, they own. So if you want to, for example, build a second Infura, would have to first build a front end they have, and also then buy a lot of servers and set up
Mhm.
a lot of blockchain nodes. Like it's very hard. So if we're like, but that's actually very important because like the amount of servers and how well they are run, quality very much depends. So like there's of course different RPC providers in terms of quality, latency, their geographical location also affects. But even if we have this base layer that basically encapsulates and it's the same everywhere, like for each
Mhm.
front end, that this backend is basically the same. We kind of solve most of this problem, and front ends are now competing with the tools that we have as marketing, like developer
Uh,
experience.
I see where you're going. It's like a double layer of decentralization, isn't it? It's not just decentralization around the RPC endpoints. You say it's the nodes, making it so that not all nodes are pointing towards one RPC point. They've got the choice of where to go. It's about the gateways. Things are really fascinating because I think at one point we all sort of thought that we had to run their own blockchain nodes at home. But now there's like hundreds of different blockchains. Some of them are very large in size and therefore difficult to run a node at home, but you're saying that you could easily set up a gateway. Like, could you see maybe like gateways that are different to like everyone having their own gateways like on their home routers, like built in things like that? So we
Yeah.
are seeing like IoT sort of networks on routers, aren't we? For nodes.
So like just to be clear, gateway so basically there's mm, like if we just trying to imagine stuff in the future, like as I said, there's like if you have a node, for example, you have a home server, you could connect it to some protocol, whether it's dRPC,
Hmm.
TRPC, it doesn't matter. And then you kind of start receiving some load for that. It's basically they've been thesis,
Hmm.
for a lot of projects right now. And the gateway is just, when it's a point, like it's communication endpoint to this
Yeah.
protocol for between like basically web3 application and this protocol. So in future, if anyone can run that, they can basically, for example, connect to this, get the data from this protocol, for example,
Yep.
From any blockchain they want, cheaper basically, at the cheapest possible cost. And there will be some trade-off, of course, because like there are a lot of different node providers. Some of them will provide better, higher price for lower latency. Others will provide cheaper price, bigger latency, some stuff like that. But yeah, but on top of that, you can build, for example, a front end that will earn you additional. So I wouldn't say that anyone would run those gateways. You could, of course, but why would you if you're doing a startup that's like $50 per month for RPC services? Like it's too much for you. But if you're, for example, a bigger company that spends few thousand bucks on infrastructure per month, you could probably do that, and it will be a viable choice. Or for example, if you're in some controversial smart contract that is banned in some places and is not banned in different places, maybe you would also want to run your own gateway that to bypass censorship, for example. Did
It's
I
a little
answer your question?
fascinating. No, it does. And I say, I was thinking deep in, and you mentioned it there, in that there's an element of deep in all of this, isn't there? Like you are talking about a decentralized infrastructure network, which is
Yes.
the embodiment of deep in.
Yeah, so basically it's our end goal. But as I said, we're trying to be, rational, practical, trying to
Mm.
build it gradual over time. So right now it's just I actually I like the model of Lido. Maybe it's controversial now, I don't know. But if you're looking at Lido, they also started with this, permissioned pool of providers, basically node runners or stakers. So basically, and that allowed them to build a very efficient, capital efficient system that is now dominating the market. And right now they are doing some permissionless pool. So if you want to stake with permissionless pool, you can do that also. They are experimenting with like stuff with DVT and other things. So the idea is that, yeah, they started with this maybe a simplified version, not so decentralized, but very efficient. And they found product market fit. They validated the idea. So now they can build the decentralized stuff, trying to be competitive with the original product also. So it's kind of, I'm inspired by that. So we are starting with this toy model, but we're figuring out, and we figured out a lot, like what works, what doesn't, and what problems, what challenges do we have. And if we started with building a completely decentralized protocol from the start, we would probably finish like we had spent 3-5 years, and we arrived after those years. We were ready to some solution maybe, and biggest chance we would find ourselves that nobody wants that. Nobody probably wants the thing we're using because we're not in the contact with our clients, with our users. So we're trying, to build up this stuff from, toy model to something more decentralized over it. And I think it's the only way in the industries or like markets where decentralization is not a first thing that your client is thinking. Because like there are markets where decentralization is actually important for obvious reasons. I don't know, for example, it's this obvious reason why you shouldn't store your money on the centralized exchange all the time. And you would like more, of course, because of that, the decentralized exchanges, it's obvious reason why would you use them, because if you want to be to self-custody, you would use decentralized exchanges. In RPC, it's not obvious it's not the first thing about it as a potential customer. So in those markets, you have to think about how to also be competitive with centralized solutions. The same, I think, with Lido. And for example, because like before Lido, there was centralized exchanges who provide staking services and Coinbase, I think, one of the biggest stakers, for example.
Earlier, you mentioned Near Protocol too. Are there any other blockchains that you're considering implementing? And if so, how do you determine which blockchains are the most promising to implement?
So like we support right now almost 60 blockchains, 56, I would say. And we just, we listen to our customers. So for us, like there are two different strategies. For example, at this point, if the blockchain is EVM compatible, it's like 10 minutes to add a new blockchain. Just set some configuration, add some configuration file, and that's. If it's like something that is not similar to EVM, for example, Solana took a lot of effort to implement because it's really different in many ways. So as for example, in a year. But yeah, we support a lot of non-EVM blockchains right now already, and we're moving to Cosmos space because I think there's some opportunity for some bigger Cosmos blockchains. They maybe do not have a competitive such competitive RPC market right now. Yeah, but otherwise, it's just basically all client driven. So for example, we have some clients. One of our, mm, like value propositions is the thing that there are a lot of big customers who run like 30 blockchains. For example, they need 30 blockchain support. So for now, they, for example, use like 5 to 10 different RPC providers. Our value proposition to them is just, you can only just use us. And that's it. And that's, of course, for them, it's far more easier to manage one solution than 10. So yeah, we just try, we have big clients, they have like 30, 40 blockchain support. And we just, ask them what kind of thing you also want to support and just add them. If it's easy, it's like a few lines of code. If it's more hard, like Cosmos, for example, or I don't know, so we are considering adding SUI right now, stuff like that. Um, it's a bit more challenging, but we also have some kind of backlog for that. But I would say that we support like all the popular blockchains right.
Cool. I'm also curious a little bit about just how long dRPC has been operating now. How big is your guys' team? Like, do you attend a lot of industry events? I know you mentioned ETH Denver earlier.
Yeah, we are like, I think it's finally 1 year since we launched a year ago in March, maybe like a bit more than a year right now already. We have a team of approximately 10 people, maybe 12, including me, CEO, marketing, and business development. So it's quite a small team.
Did you guys raise venture capital?
We are incubated. There's a company called P2P.org. It's a big staking company, and we are kind of incubated inside of it. So currently we are backed by them, but we will raise this year later.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, for everyone who isn't aware of where they can find out more, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you?
You can go to dRPC.org and find everything about our service. There's links to Discord, our Twitter.
It was absolutely fascinating. I think the hidden centralization around Web3 is an area that I think is very interesting. Obviously, there's the front end websites, of which on Ethereum, a lot are still hosted on AWS. And this, I think, is another example of sort of areas of Web3 where people should maybe have a look and think, okay, is there a way we can do better? Is that something you'd agree with? That it's not that it's necessarily wrong to be centralized, but for RPC to be centralized, but I think we can still do better than we are now.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot of the time. So, and the thing that I was talking about, focusing on the building this community of node runners, professional node runners, is also helps us to solve those problems because most of them they do not run their stuff on AWS. They run it on their hardware. We have a lot of people who basically, are doing stuff in their garage or their basement, and also in the data centers, but by actually buying or renting the hardware. And right now, I think we have like 20 maybe different data centers where all of our providers host their nodes. So this is basically it's a natural process because they want to cut costs and AWS is very expensive. And you get this decentralization as a side effect.
No, I think it's absolutely fascinating. And I applaud you for your work in pushing decentralization further forward. I think it's something that's critical, not just in Web3, but in AI and in just data in general. I think decentralization is king for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. That was super educational, very interesting. I also enjoyed the deck as well with the memes that were in a funny way explaining all of the how this works from a technical perspective. I'm not sure if that's something that we can also share in the tweet, but if so, I think our audience would really enjoy learning about dRPC and through that deck. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, well, we'll link that down in the tweet below as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Fantastic to have you on.
Yeah, I hope had some interesting stuff to say. Hope you enjoyed.
For sure.
And thank you for your time. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Cool. Until next time, everyone. See you again.
Yes.
See you guys.